Polly at a conference, I think 10 years ago, where I was performing a piece which I had written. It was a setting of the children's story, The Lion Who Wanted to Love, and we performed with full symphony orchestra a concert for the under fives, which was kind of an interactive and very child-focused presentation for the kids. And Polly really enjoyed that piece, and she enjoyed the performance. And so we formed this connection where she wanted to commission me to write something for her and for Ensemble 360. And that kicked off, I think, the most productive and creative relationship I've had in my entire career. We have the all-important lamp bar. Off we go. When Polly asked me to write something especially for Ensemble 360, we started trying to find a book to set to music, trying to find a children's story that in some way feels musical, that could sustain a whole 25-minute musical performance. And so Polly and I spent a long time sitting on the floors of children's bookshops, and we came across the book Giddy Goat. And this was a very cute story about a mountain goat who's afraid of heights. And there just seemed to be so much adventure in Giddy's tale that it just felt like the perfect story to turn into music. One of the things that really motivate me as a composer is to find ways to meaningfully invite the audience to participate in the performance. So it's not just clapping along or making a random sound effects. It's about singing melodies, it's about performing rhythms or rapping, something that can be quite sophisticated but actually needs to be immediately embraceable by the young audience. And so that's a real challenge, to craft very tiny melodies, very simple things that everyone can grasp onto straight away, but actually can have real solid musical value in the performance. And in Giddy Goat, actually, the original setting of that was one which was really quite passive. So the kids basically sat for 12, 13 minutes listening, and then there was a kind of an interactive section at the end. And what I wanted to do was to just make points all the way through the performance where the audience can join in with the action on stage. So the children are continually engaged, but also challenged a little bit as well. There's a perception, I think, when people hear what I do for a living, they think that I write children's music or music that you would hear on TV, and actually I don't really feel like that's at all what we create. The music is not childlike. We're inviting young audiences to come in to a performance which is sophisticated and of course is completely motivated towards their engagement, but never are we patronizing the young audiences with the sounds that they hear. And for me, that is a really exciting opportunity. So when something happens in this children's picture book, like in The Lion Who Wanted to Love, when Leo the lion falls into the river, and this is an incredibly dramatic moment in the story, the music can be really powerful and dramatic as well. And so we're encouraging young audiences to really follow how the music makes them feel, to trust their emotions, to trust the sounds around them. And that's really exciting, because actually for a very long time people only thought the music that you could play to young people were Carnival of the Animals and Peter and the Wolf. That was it. And actually still some organizations, that's all they provide. Yet those pieces, brilliant that they are, were written for an entirely different generation. Society is so different now, and young people are very sophisticated consumers. You know, my young nephew can swipe away at an iPad, you know, from the moment he could crawl, basically. And so we as professional musicians, we have to change too. We have to up the ante and to up the game so that we're giving our absolute best to young audiences, and that we never forget those young audiences are living now in the 21st century. The relationship that I have with music in the round is just incredible, and I feel so privileged to get to work with such brilliant people. And that relationship for me feels very vibrant and very creative, and I think it comes from trust, really. You know, when I first delivered the first piece to the ensemble, they had no idea what it would be, how it would go. But year in, year out, every single piece, the ensemble and Polly, they've just thrown themselves into the music. And for me as a composer, I just couldn't ask for anything more, because these brilliant people are playing my piece again and again and again. And so they then start to absorb the music into themselves, and it becomes their piece. And so, to be honest with you, they're the easiest group in the world to write for, because they just make everything sound great. But one of the things that really motivates me is the idea of what's next, what's the next step, what's the new thing this year, what can we do differently, how can we improve the product. And so there's with thought, if you lined up all the pieces that I've written for 360 over the years, you'll see a natural development in every single piece. Things become a little bit more sophisticated. The use of imagery becomes much more intense. The vocal parts, the way that we actually tell the story on top of the music becomes more challenging as well for Polly. And you know, actually one of the things we've spoken about is these pieces are really, they're designed for musicians to tell as well, because it's so complicated and so sophisticated in the way that the words are set on top of the music, that actually if you're not a musician and you're, for instance, we're an actor, that would be a hell of a job to have to go ahead and try and work out how to say all these words in time with the music. But every year there seems to be something that we progress a little step further, and for me that's just so exciting.
Hungry lepers looking for lunch. Run, Leo, run. Run, Leo, run. Hungry.
The next step for our relationship is actually, this year I'm composing 2 pieces for the group. Rather than one big story piece, we're actually going to have 2. And so this, I think, is going to be an interesting thing for the audience, because when the audience comes along, they're coming to hear this story, to meet the characters from that single story, and to experience participating within that. And actually what we're going to give them now is 2 shorter stories. Still great fun, brilliant stories, wonderful images to show on screen, but they're very different stories. And so I think that will bring a lot of variety into the concert experience for the young audience. And musically, I want both pieces to sound completely different as well, and that's going to be my challenge this summer, to find a way to make that happen. One of the things that I think is so interesting about the way Polly and the ensemble deliver the concert presentation is that basically, particularly in the family concert situation, the audience turn up, and generally 99% of the audience are unprepared in terms of they haven't learned all the participatory elements beforehand. And so coming to the concert has a kind of a workshop element to it as well, where the musicians interact with the audience, they teach the audience what they need to do. Basically, we skill up the audience to be able to perform the music with the ensemble. And so that makes quite a fun, lively concert experience, where definitely it's not just passive listening at all, it's really gone a whole step further than that. And when you then get to the moments in the performance where the audience are actively engaged, it's wonderful to see the amount of joy in people's faces, you know, just clapping or singing, you know, the simplest little thing, but that can bring so much joy.
Off we go. I like the beat of the beat. 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 Nice.
Because these pieces are commissioned for schools and for families, the adults need to enjoy that as much as possible. And it was really, you know, really cute. After the performance of Stan and Mabel that I saw at Christmas time, one of the dads came up and said, "Oh my gosh, you should turn one of your songs into a dance remix." So yeah, watch this space. I like the beat of your feet, you know, which is something that a cat is saying to a rabbit. You know, it might end up as a dance tune. When I first started presenting concerts to children, especially to young children, I knew, I had this inner sort of feeling that the experience would have to be very visual for the young audience. And so I'm so old that basically that means that when I first started doing these gigs, I had to get 35mm slides made up to project above the orchestra. And it was so expensive to get that done. You know, you could only afford about 15 slides per concert. And since then, because I'm also a geek and I love technology, I have really embraced digital projection for performances for young people. Because for me it seems, especially with a young audience, the kids need that visual aid from the book above the orchestra, above the ensemble, to really help them understand exactly what's going on, to be able to absorb the emotions completely within any musical event. And now, as technology has improved, of course, and become more sophisticated, within any story piece that I write, we wonderfully get the permission to project the images from the book, but we can do so many interesting things with those images that there are probably hundreds and hundreds of slides within any performance. But that really allows us to direct the audience's listening. So for instance, the latest piece that we wrote, Stan and Mabel, when all the animals travel to Italy on a plane and Stan, the dog, is very nervous and the music starts to sound very nervous, you know, you can zoom straight in on his image on screen. And that really helps the audience understand exactly what's happening within the music. And actually, as a composer, that's a fantastic tool to have, because there's nothing's vague, nothing's left unknown. We're absolutely guiding people through with their listening. What I really hope with these pieces that I'm writing for the early years, I hope that non-specialist teachers, especially the ones who are terrified of music, I hope they really see how simple and how much fun music making can be with young children. And we are so grateful to the amount of work that those teachers do with their children to prepare them for coming along to the concert, because there's just nothing more joyous than watching hundreds and hundreds of young people who are just full of music. And for me as the composer who wrote what they're singing, that's just, you know, it's the highlight of my year to see that moment happen. And the kids then, of course, they get so much out of that performance because they've had all that preparation beforehand. And I think it's interesting also that before, you know, we would provide teacher training sessions, opportunities for the teachers to come along to work with Polly to prepare for the experience. But actually now, through technology, we can provide online videos and play along CDs or downloadable resources. And so we're hoping that we're giving teachers as much material as they need to absolutely get the maximum benefit out of the concert. People think of music as something that's, you know, it's an added extra, it's a luxury, it's an entertainment. And for sure, yeah, it can be all of those things, but actually it could be the absolute center of a child's education. We're counting, we're learning new words, reading books, learning complex word patterns, whatever it may be. The cross-curricular benefits of on Ensemble 360 early years concert are extraordinary. There's so many interesting areas for a really creative teacher just to take this material and to run with it, and it's really exciting. So for me, the starting point in making one of these pieces is always the book. It's about reading the book again and again and again, but the fact that actually we're now at the composing stage means that I believe in the book because I've already heard music that would fit with the story. And the funny thing is, when we select the books, I sit in bookshops and I read through the book, and I try and imagine what the music would sound like that's going to go with the story. And in reality, the music that I ultimately write doesn't sound anything like what I hear in my head in Waterstones, but as long as the story presents itself as a musical story, as a story where there's a journey to go on musically, then that's fine. And then I go through the book and I throw thousands of post-it notes just with ideas or thoughts or feelings about what's going to happen. And then crucially, before I've even composed a note, I try and work out where the audience participation is going to go within the story. And this is something that I didn't used to do when I first started writing music for children. I would write the music first and then make the participation as the last stage. Whereas now, it's very much all engineered in the planning stage. And that enables me to ensure that what we ask the children to do is that it's really integral to the entire composition. And then I just basically start to write. And the funny thing is I will sit and noodle away at a piano for ages and ages and ages, trying to make a tune or find some nice chords. But then after that initial exploration, it's just really all about starting to score, and I just go straight into my music program and I just start to write for the ensemble, and then I don't eat, sleep or drink for about 3 or 4 weeks. I just sit here and kind of work things out. And then there's always this really interesting point in the process where Polly comes for a visit, and I sort of show her what I've made, and I teach her some of the participatory elements, and that's a really invaluable stage in the process for me, because we spent about an entire day discussing whether or not there should be an F sharp or an F natural in Sir Scallywag's theme. Because actually it's all very well me going and writing stuff here on this screen, but it's Polly that's got to go and deliver it, and she's got to go and engage and inspire people to sing this music. So it's really important that no matter how simple a participatory element can be, that it's really skillfully crafted, because it needs to be musically valid, but it needs to be instantly appealing and be able to be taught in 10 seconds flat as well. And actually that takes a long time. So sometimes you make about 20 or 30 different versions of the song, subtly different versions of a song, but still they're different versions nonetheless. Until you find the one, then you get the one and you think, wow, it could never really be anything else other than that one. That's the correct one. And then you throw the rest of them in the bin. But it's, I don't know, this is my love. I love writing music. I love live music. This is all electronic and it's fine. It sounds okay, but as for studio space. But when you hear music live in concert, it's quite overwhelming. There was a really amazing thing happened in December when I heard Stan and Mabel for the first time, and I'd never heard the piece live. I'd only heard it on my computer. So I'm always a bit nervous when you go along to hear a first performance. And there was this little girl sitting behind me, and when it came to the song, which appears again and again throughout the structure, she wasn't really singing any of it. And I thought, oh God, I've made the song too hard. But then when the song came around for the third time, she just sang at the top of her voice. And yeah, I was sitting there almost in tears in the hall experiencing that, because
that's just totally magical for me, and I can't really quite, I don't really quite believe that somehow I could have written something that affects people like that. And you know, it's an amazing thing. I feel very lucky.